Hello there folks, this is Ferengi on board here. Welcome to my YouTube channel, a place where I discuss different topics about understanding, introspection, dream interpretation and other things that people may find a bit difficult or may not come up with a response easily, while also reminding them that whatever wisdom I share is part of my experience and part of the sources I have encountered. So I also urge people not to take whatever I say fully for granted. Now the purpose of this video is the part of grinding, the idea of grinding in video games, and why people understand and have been understanding this badly, and why this is also a good economical way of keeping people plugged into the game. Now the point about grinding is it's actually part of a propaganda called reverse truth telling. Okay, everything in this world is taught in reverse when it comes to the truth, because the truth can only be realized, it can never be learned. That is a great point. And this is the case with literally everything throughout life, and especially through the idea of industrial revolution, okay, in the 18th century. The point was very simple. Ever since then, people started creating industrial complexes, and in these complexes people started working, and it's always been important that you worked hard to achieve your things, because that's how you were given a sense of purpose. And now in video games we have seen this, which is nothing else than a continuation of the old paradigms that have been existing. Even at work, you are taught through school, because school is nothing else than a way of teaching you how to be complacent in the name of society. The point about life is you are being taught all the irrelevant things, okay, to do, so that you simply commit to self-destruction. That is why so many people hate their lives, but they become also complacent to that, because the previous generations have been doing that, and at the same time they have been enforcing that upon the next generation, which has become a very it has become quite the norm in the end, because, well, it's easy to do what other people are doing, and that is one reason why we still have the need for control and so many structures of society. Okay, the only reason why we have politics is because we lack control and self-control. Okay, and as long as people refuse their authenticity and their own personal power, okay, they refuse embracing that, there will always be these parts of the shadow, okay, like different aspects that do nothing else than rule what can be ruled in humanity, because, well, that's how things have always been. Any race, when it appears, it takes a long time for it to realize and to achieve certain levels of awareness and different other things. Okay, so as the awareness and consciousness expand, these two things actually dictate how much control a certain race needs. And there will always be parasitic entities that will try to inhibit the evolution of any race, and of course this is also done in such a way that the point is very important. Okay, these processes of evolution also need a certain level of hinderment, because the more you hinder something, it's just like levels in a game. Okay, the more the level takes, the more the person actually gets to feel the certain things they are taught in that level. Okay, older games usually had this, in which several initial levels would teach you certain things, and they would last a certain duration, okay, which was tested and retested, okay, to make sure that they are not necessarily too difficult, but they are challenging, and they don't last overwhelmingly long. Okay, so the point is, if you have a certain level that lasts a certain while, it will allow the player to simply understand different topics. Okay, it will allow the player to understand some of the new mechanics. Now this point of control through the person, okay, what I call reverse control or the idea of long-range control, this is something that has been plaguing humanity for a long time. You give people the impression that they have a sense of control over their life, and through that sense of control they simply have the impression that what they are doing is actually the good thing. That is why you have so many people who don't know fuck about the world, but they do have the impression that they are the most knowledgeable. This is something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which means the more idiot you are, the more you have the impression that you know. Okay? The point is, in truth, the more you know, the more you realize that you actually don't know shit. It's how things go, because the more aware you become, the more you see there is around you, and so there is so much more to learn, actually. So grinding in video games is nothing else than the painful reality of life, that doing the hard work always gets you somewhere, okay? But just look at everyone around you. Doing the hard work never leads you anywhere, okay? Just look at all the people before you, the previous generations. They simply hate their lives because what they have been doing is they've been working hard for school, and they have been working hard for a job, and then they reached an age when they retired, but where's the happiness that they were promised? They didn't get any of that because there never existed one. But give the people the impression they are doing something right, and they will actually do it, because they don't have a purpose in life. That is one of the most painful things, okay? If you don't have a purpose in life, okay, if you don't have something to stand for, you know, in your case, okay, like a hobby or something that you really love doing, without turning it into a drug activity, okay, something that you will use to, you know, pull you away from other important things, okay, well, you will fall for everything else. That is why there are so many ONGs or NGOs, how they are called in English, okay, non-governmental organizations that just give people the impression they are doing something good, and some of them can actually teach people to become fanatics over something, because there's a lot of perverted psychology behind that, and psychology in the end is not that which you see from your local psychologists giving you a book and asking you some stupid, useless questions. Psychology at the highest level, and the only one that I'd be interested in, is the one that says how to break the human mind and how to control it. That's the purpose of psychology. Sure, there will be a lot of people that might say, hey, that's not correct, but if you're saying that, you're definitely not knowledgeable of the higher peaks of psychology and why it is actually used, and why society is like this, because we haven't ever been investing in how to correct ourselves, okay, how to understand ourselves better. We don't even have our spine, we don't even keep our spine correctly, okay. Some people in life don't even have a spine, okay, just to make a pun, okay. We don't even know how to breathe correctly, but at least we have invented some of the most devastating weapons of destruction. So that's the whole point. If you seek to teach me some lessons of psychology, better go teach yourself a bit about awareness, because I'm not going to listen to people whose awareness is much lower than mine, okay. In a society where health is lacking and education is lacking, but we have so much self-destruction, okay, don't teach me that psychology's purpose is to actually help humanity, okay. Why is there so much psychology behind the perverted strategies of economy? Because psychology will always be used to break the human spirit, to break the human mind, and to force people to actually do whatever some people, well, whatever their bidding would be. Now the point about this is not to demonize society more than it actually has demonized itself, but to most people who simply are too complacent with it as it is, well, you won't be able to demonize it, because they will simply ignore you. They will simply fight for it to remain as is. But okay, to each and every one their own, okay. So the point about video games is they're only propagating a plague that has been affecting humanity, and of course psychology and psychiatry have constantly been failing to observe this and actually start teaching people the real aspect of this, because what you do through people working their asses for something that's mainly irrelevant, because in the game whatever you're obtaining through grinding is kind of irrelevant for the real life you are in. Yes, video games are a separate parallel life, they're a separate parallel existence. You should watch some of my previous videos. I discuss about that, as well as watch my video about how to be a fully fledged gamer, both in this life and in the life of video games, because I explain some things that people should take into account to increase their potential in playing video games and understanding the world and understanding themselves as well. If these things are lacking, you will never be a good player, both in real life and as well in video games, because in the end, whatever your possibility in video games is, okay, whatever your capacity, okay, your skill is in video games, is nothing else than a reflection of how you are in real life. The way you treat yourself in real life, that's how you're gonna be in video games as well. Some people will have the impression that they're doing much better in video games. Well, probably because they have spent much more time in that instead of living their own life and discovering some of their potentials. The moment most people find the difficulty, they simply break and they no longer want to continue anything, which is a pretty dumb way to live, but okay, it is something that has been taken from the previous generations, and people continue to death spiral again and again. Working hard only makes hateful people, because let's take for example World of Warcraft. It was one of the first games that appeared, and it had a very gruesome grinding, especially at the beginning, where Blizzard was still beginning and they were still learning different things. And the point about that was, when private servers appeared, there was a great hatred amongst people in many situations, because those people who were stuck to the World of Warcraft area, okay, that was their main existence. And it's not a bad thing, okay, it's still a way of perceiving consciousness. But I made a video a day or two ago in which I explained the concept of my own that I called the hero in the wrong world syndrome, because it sounded funny. Now the point about this is quite easy, okay? The grinding part is something that I call toxic and irrelevant. In my video games that I will create, I prefer creating little to no grinding, because if you create a game that can be finished in 3 hours and through grinding you have it finished in 10 hours, as of my opinion, that is bad design, okay? But people simply hate their lives so much that they want to they want to dive as much as possible into any other thing that will simply pull them away from the life that they consider sucks. But life itself doesn't suck, it's actually the person, because the person hasn't been taught how to how to handle their own life, their own emotions, their own mind. So basically you haven't been taught anything through all the things that you have gone in life: school, university, master degrees, and whatever the fuck. All these things are just useless things that give you the impression that through your hard work they force you to create a sense of attachment and a sense of identity. This world, this society is suffering from too much sense of identity, because the more you create an identity, the more you lie yourself, and the more you lie yourself, you are further away from your own truth, and therefore, as a punishment, you are destined to suffer. And it's not because I say, it's because this is the way this universe works. It's not about heaven and hell. Heaven and hell are not geographical regions, they are not geographical aspects, they are just ways of perceiving life here on this planet. You're not going to hell after you die, or you're not going to heaven after you will die. These are just places that you experience in here. Of course, they have been fed to human minds for so many hundreds of years that now they are the new norm, but the only reason they are the new norm is because people constantly fight for those, instead of simply realizing that, hey, you know what, things can actually be much different than what I know. But in the end, the point of life is to go beyond what most people do and transcend that, because doing what most people do will yield you the same results. If you rage and do everything that most people do in video games, you will have the same results. What it means when you're raging is that you have a stupidly ridiculous expectation, okay, that you want to win all the games, which is naturally impossible. but your low esteem, okay, your self-esteem is so low that the only thing you're wanting is you want abuse. You want to be abused because low self-esteem people want more and more abuse because they are taught to be people pleasers, and you believe that if people can trample you or whatever they can do to you, you will receive at least a bit of attention, which you will never receive, because people who are abusers, they are slaves of the abuses they have been through, but no one taught them how to cleanse themselves and how to free themselves from the meaning they have created through those abuses. And again, it's a death cycle, okay, it's a death spiral, and like a repetitive cycle of death, as I call it, because it's what I call a death of consciousness in a way. Okay, this is more like poetical, not to be taken for granted. So the idea of working your ass hard, okay, is nothing else than an aspect of victimization. You're built this idea into your mind that you have to work your ass for everything, and specifically everything. But this is very wrong, because you don't need to work hard, you just need to work smart. In order to play video games, you only need to play a fair amount of time, not to play 10 hours a day, because you need to understand that there are so many concepts which I explain in the video that I spoke about earlier. The idea of how to become a fully fledged gamer, it's around 30 to 40 minutes long, so it does explain on many things. So there is a thing called chronotypes, for example, and in this idea you simply have to understand which are your strongest hours of the day and which are your weakest hours in the day. Of course, society is built in such a way that it will keep trampling on these ideas, but you have to understand that you have to create life on your own terms, not just live it on others' terms, because if you live life on others' terms, you're only gonna embrace those results only. Insanity and madness are nothing else than trying the same thing, expecting different results. So, it's exactly the same thing in games. So many people play 10 hours a day to grind their things, but they don't understand that the more you play something, the less your potential drops. The more your potential drops, and the less capable you become, because the body simply becomes weakened and weakened, okay? You have to understand that you have to take breaks, and you have to think logically each and every question, each and everything. And that is done through breaks and through allowing your mind to actually breathe. But if you keep thinking and thinking and thinking, it's how you create mental noise in your head, and then you start doubting yourself, because everything is so, like there's so much mess in there, through all the raging, through all the misunderstandings, and through all the failures you'll go through, because if you disregard your body, there will always be failures. So understanding chronotypes, and basically when you need to sleep, when you need to do the most important things, because each and every person has a certain chronotype, which means certain hours of the day will be your strongest point and other hours will be your weakest point. So you have to understand that if you want to do the most important things in that day, you have to do them when the time is the best. Okay, if you want to grind, for example, and that is the most difficult thing that you have to do for the day, do that only in those hours when you are at your peak performance. Okay, and as I said, life is a cycle, and when you go to sleep you basically die and you wake up to different lives, and when you wake up to this life again, and basically it's all about life cycles. Each and every day is basically a life that you live, and the point is, through this cycle of life you have a peak of existence, and then you have a lower state, okay, when you should be focusing only on the last easiest things. Okay, that is why you could do games that not raiding or difficult things. You could also do them when you are at the weakest. If you have some of those games that you play only for chilling and not for raging and expecting to be steamrolled, because think of how many times you get into a game and you want to win literally everything, and you want to win everything, but it's just a stupid expectation, and then you lose all the games, and then you cry about that, and you want to play even more because it's never enough, and then if you win a game you feel like you're God. Okay, this shows how horrible you are as a person. Okay, and the further you are from your personal truth, the more you will suffer. It's not because I want it or anyone wants it, it's because this is how the universe works. The more you stray away from your truth, that's how much you suffer. So the point in video games is that only play a short while, because the point is only play or do the most difficult things when the time is most beneficial for you, when you are on that peak, okay, the peak performance part of your day. Of course, you will have a lot of things that will fight against that, like different parasites who won't want you to improve. You won't want to deal with yourself and become introspective because you basically hate yourself and all such, all such illusions. But the point about this is, the more you know about yourself, you'll see that you will perform much better, because the more you know about your strengths and especially your weaknesses, the more you can play around with those and actually enjoy life more and more, because most people suffer because they don't enjoy life. Even if they do things that they say they like, they only like those things because they distract them from the horrible life they have created, and they have created. Up to a certain age, yes, it is a problem because, well, you don't have the power to decide for yourself, but after a certain time you have the power to do that. And most people just prefer clinging to what their parents said, what society says, what television says, and so many other such things. It's not necessarily healthy, but hey, to each their own. As I said, it's your responsibility to tackle your own life. Your life and your well-being is the only business you should handle, or one of the most important, but it's actually the most important, because by making your life enjoyable, everything else becomes enjoyable. So the point about video games is that grinding is something that gives you the impression that you're doing something right, but it's only a seed of corruption that is being planted upon you, because working hard takes so much money from you at times, but also takes so much time. Money does come back, yes, but simply time does no longer come back. The more you spend time unproductively, okay, by working hard, the more you become angered, because deep down inside you know you're not doing the right thing, but at the same time you're not allowing yourself to embrace a new way, a new path. And that's why you see so many people raging in video games when their one-trick pony character gets nerfed or changed, and whenever a new patch appears, so many people start crying because they don't like change. Change is the only constant in this world, in this universe. Change is always happening. It's just that most people awareness, well, it doesn't allow you to see. So the point about this is very simple. You have to learn to play intelligently. You have to learn to do things intelligently instead of actually doing the hard work, okay? If you want to become attached to a game like World of Warcraft, where you have to actually play, it will create a sense of power that you have experienced a lot. But what you have experienced is not anything. You have experienced grinding, okay? People who have been playing on private servers, they have been enjoying specifically the good stuff, okay, the PvP part, because most of these private servers give you everything from the start and you don't have to spend so much time on grinding. Is grinding bad though? It kind of is in a way, because it creates an enormous amount of illusions. It gives you the impression that you are who you are, which is one of the most hideous things, because you're creating such a great false sense of self, okay, which is kind of narcissistic, to believe that you're suddenly the center of the world and you are who you are, and you become attached to things like the main character, or certain things like that, and it actually piles up, and then it actually helps you break so much easier when you build those expectations that you're building. You're working hard, you're creating stupidly ridiculously high expectations that you're gonna pwn everyone in PvP, and then when you get into PvP you're gonna get wrecked and you simply break, because that's what grinding does to you. You have worked so hard to get rapes. And so many games have a very bad sense of grinding, in which you just grind and grind, and the items and the stuff that you get aren't simply worth the effort, and it's just to keep you plugged into that game, so that that game earns more played hours, because through that, the more a game is played, you know, the more money they get from different sources, money which they put into advertising, and then that advertising draws even more people who will spend more time into that game. And most games actually are recorded how much time people play, and that's how you get money as a company, by exploiting people's beliefs and by exploiting people's expectations. And most of those companies may not even be aware of the damage they are producing, and they are doing nothing else than making things even worse, because there's a lot of traumatized people from traumatized families, okay, that have been propelling through the generations these ideas of abuses, and at times even become worse and worse by the generation. And these people will be even more traumatized by the games they choose to experience, because no one actually taught you what you need to know about video games. Video games are far from just pressing a few buttons and making a few decisions. Video games are a very good way of actually exploring yourself and, you know, becoming more introspective by actually putting a lot of questions. Why did you do that? Why did you choose that? Why you made certain kills, why you didn't make, why you chose to work extra hard on that, why you chose to bypass that quest, and so on and so forth. You can become so introspective through video games. And I'm not speaking about, you know, those silly things about crying about characters when they die. Yes, sure, it's not bad to actually become somewhat invested in those games, but invest yourself a bit in those games, but without the attachments, because so many people have become invested in the games, but when it comes to part ways with those games, well, it's simply impossible to them. I've been through that, and it's been a very important set of lessons that I learned. But the point is, experience that game just as you would experience life. Most people don't experience life, so that's why they don't experience the games. They just press a few buttons and they just stupidly expect to win. Well, that's not how life goes. And of course, if you don't realize that, well, pain is yours for the having. So, well, the point about this is, I can actually go on and on, but hopefully I made my point understood. Hopefully you've liked this type of content I've been creating, and the point is, I've been speaking about video games in my previous videos, so feel free to go and watch those as well if you would like. I'm not forcing people to do anything. If you like the type of content that I'm creating, feel free to like and subscribe. Feel free to share with others so that we raise the awareness of people together. And, well, probably, most likely, also point them to my channel so that, you know, they can check on other things as well. And all these said, you are loved and appreciated. Whatever you are doing is the best you can at the right pace for you. Take care of yourselves, become more introspective, make your own life more enjoyable, and as usual, you are loved and appreciated. Ferinjan Board signing out.